Hello YouTube, this is Boston Best 047, and in this video I'm going to discuss my changing philosophical views. And it's funny because, as I mentioned in one of my other videos, when I first came onto YouTube I did not have something which I could call, say, a worldview. That is, not that I even didn't have it, but that I was going through a period where I was trying to reassess certain aspects or manners of thinking, and that is reflected in a lot of my earlier videos that I've done. But I would say that after really concentrating on it, I would say that I have a worldview, and it's really the old worldview that I always basically had. Um, but it wasn't something that I was really comfortable with, or I thought maybe I should think about it a little bit differently or whatever. So after that, I've come to that conclusion, and it's interesting when you have that moment of change and you're changing things a lot. I'm not a person that likes change very much, honestly. So it causes you a lot of turmoil inside when you have that happening. But I've come out a better person for it, I'd like to think. But it's interesting because I was reevaluating some philosophical ideas I had come across when I was a little bit younger, in which I kind of rejected because they seemed so typical. And I guess one of those ideas was probably the ideas of Nietzsche, for example. When I was younger, didn't really pay attention to Nietzsche too much. I sort of just overlooked it, and then it became sort of a cliche because the type of subcultures that I'm into and things like that, they like Nietzsche a lot. And I've always had this situation where I wanted to want to dance to my own step a little bit more, so I never was really into that. But when something is true, when something reflects truth, you can't just run away from it. You end up finding it, and there's a reason why I think Nietzsche's ideas endure for people, because they reflect truth, you know. And thinking about it, I probably, without realizing it, did reflect some of Nietzsche's ideas when I was younger, when I was in my teens and stuff, without even realizing it. And so, embracing nihilism was something that I realized, because when I first doing videos, I thought of myself as a conservative, maybe a classical conservative in a sense. I've always I've always had a certain attraction to the reactionary, almost Tory-like ideas, as sort of alluded to in the "What Traditionalist Conservatism Means" video I did. But I can't really call myself anything of that with a straight face. I remember thinking when I was younger that if I had been alive in the time of the American Revolution, I would have been a royalist, honestly. I'm from the United States, and I would have been a royalist, honestly. I thought probably a lot of America's problems are because we separated from the crown. Like Canada, for example, I think is probably better off than we are, because they stayed loyal to the crown. And actually, that's what's always fascinated me about Canada, is that they did stay loyal to the crown. But I'm getting away from the main point. I can't really call myself that with a straight face, because a lot of them are wrapped up in Christian morality and all those things connected back to the British Empire and things like that. I don't really go along with any of that, really. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people who lean in that direction will probably think of me as a freaking degenerate. I play metal music. I have long hair, and I'm in my 20s, so I'm a lot younger than most of those people, even though I feel old at heart. And I have a speech impediment, by the way, but whatever. But, I had that moment, and I felt like I was expressing those views in a sort of half-assed, sloppy and, way of interpreting them. In my reassessing the men's rights movement video, I felt like I was going from a conservative pessimism type perspective. That's what I would call it. But I remember reading that pessimism was a gateway to nihilism, and when I started thinking about it a little bit more, so looking at it a little bit more, I would say that I could embrace nihilism. That's always how I felt. that things didn't really have any sort of intrinsic value. There was probably that there was a more or less a belief in nothing. I tend to feel that way. I'm not an atheist, mind you, but I would agree with that. I would agree with that perspective, and so that's reflecting my current views. But then I am a traditionalist, which is a contradiction, being nihilist and being a traditionalist. But what do I mean by being a traditionalist? I don't mean that I'm a traditionalist in the typical sense of the term. I believe people need traditions. I believe people need religion. I believe people need patriotism. They need culture. They need these sorts of things. I like to think of it myself as what Plato talked about, like the noble lie. I believe people need noble lies, and I believe the philosopher king, the philosopher, doesn't really need to challenge those things. The purpose of being a philosopher, in my view, is, and this is even really excuse me, this isn't even really that original of a concept, but this is something I do believe and take to heart, is that the purpose of being a philosopher is not to challenge the prevailing ideas, but to understand the word for your own sake almost. And that's how I look at being a truth seeker. I pursue truth for its own sake, and I believe that's an important value, but I don't think it's something that can be shared with everybody. So I don't seek to challenge people's prevailing wisdom, or people's prevailing attitudes. I seek to give them wisdom. How about that? Let's think of that. Let's consider it like that. And I'm doing this off the cuff, by the way, so this isn't going to be perfect. Like all my videos, none of it's perfect. But that's how I think of things, and it's interesting when you can look at the word in that way. And I know that probably sounds vaguely elitist to people, the ideas of that. I don't mean to make it sound that way. I can see how that can be interpreted because, and this is where the idea is not original. I remember there was a book, Neoconservatism, a eulogy to an idea or something. I forget how it was said. And they were examining the ideas of people like Leo Strauss, for example. And it was a critical, perspective. It was coming from an objective, libertarian type of view. And I remember this actually might have been the first time I was attracted to a lot of these ideas when I was reading how they described neoconservatism. And neoconservatism clearly was not the kind of view you get from paleocons. It's a little bit more philosophically deep and different than that. I like that perspective in a way, ironically, but it was vaguely elitist, almost fascistic in a way. I don't claim to think that way. I don't seek to force people into a box or anything like that. I am a libertarian in a lot of ways. I'm culturally conservative, but I'm socially libertarian. I'm not a social conservative. I'm not a person that wants to put people into a box. I believe people should be allowed to make their own decisions. I believe people's sexual choices and what they choose to put in their bodies is up to them. It's a personal matter, not for public morality. As long as people understand what responsibility and duty is, I don't believe we have any problems in that regard. But people might interpret it like that. I'm not interpreting it like that. It's just about stepping outside of yourself for a little bit, and that's what I meant in my video about religion. I believe people need their myths and their legends. As I said, I believe people need these things, and I like those things myself. I like traditional culture. I like what existed centuries ago. I've always been that way. I've always been a history buff. But it's not the silly idea, silly notion that I should be bound to that. I'm not bound to that at all. And I don't believe you should be either, because I believe it becomes an unhealthy neurotic obsession after a while, which some right-wingers I think have. I think some right-wingers suffer from a sort of puritanical perspective. This kind of idea that the past was a puritanical thing, when it wasn't. And so that's a problem there. So I'm a little bit. That's why I call myself a centrist sometimes, because I'm more to the right than to the left, but I am critical of the right as well. I have problems with the right. I think the right isn't always right, but that they're probably more right than the left. I think the left has some areas where they're not wrong, but they're completely misguided. So that's why I sometimes find myself being in the center a little bit. I don't know. Maybe I'm just indecisive. I don't know. I'm a Libra after all, so maybe that's the case. Well, that's a different discussion for a different video. But anyway, so that's that. But getting back to Nietzsche, was I was this is really where some of my recent philosophical changes came from, and really it was very enlightening. And I hope that all of you go out and read up on that. But I was thinking about Nietzsche's master versus slave morality, and this concept, it's always interpreted in a Buddhist sort of way, that he was talking about masters should dominate slaves or something. I could see how people would see that. That's the probably the view that a lot of fascists took or whatever. But and again, I don't claim to be a Nietzsche expert or whatever. But I think it's interesting when you look at ideas like good and evil. When you think about the idea of good, the whole idea of good, the absolute basic idea of good is to discipline evil. You never have a situation where it would be the reverse, where you would feel bad for being good and wishing you were more evil, or something like that. Maybe that exists in hell or something like that, in some far off place somewhere where only evil exists and the light of God can't shine, or something like that. Maybe. But in someone's sick imagination. But for normal people in the here and now, in the realm of the living, you don't have that. The whole idea of being good is not to be evil. And when you think about master morality as the original form of morality, that's what it was. Evil is just that barbaric, primitive urges that people have, and it's their conscious self, their good self, that needs to discipline that part, and that's why civilizations evolved the way it is. But I find it interesting because we live in a society with the remnants of Christianity still around, and with the remnants of liberalism still around. Well, not with the remnants of liberalism. Liberalism is around. Excuse me. You find that slave morality is what tends to be the norm. And the thing for me is that I don't interpret this stuff in a Buddhist sort of way. Superficial analysts would do that, as I was saying. I think of master morality as really just what involves dusting yourself off, getting up, and going back to work. It's really about taking responsibility for your own life and your own destiny. And we don't live in a society where that exists. And I remember when I was younger, I didn't have that understanding of that. When I was younger and I had some problems with people and I had various other problems, I did not understand this kind of notion. This is where my philosophical ideas change. And I'm forever indebted to this concept because it's changed my way of looking at the world for the better, I think. I think other people should as well. If I understand this principle, because it's the oldest principle, it's what we are, it's what we have, I think. It's the only thing that really matters. It's the only truth, I think, that it really exists, is that you are responsible for yourself, and you have to decide what you're going to do for yourself. And trying to embrace these slavish concepts like equality, for example, to be quite honest, it never works, and it doesn't create social progress. Not that social progress is even a realistic notion. But these are the sort of ideas I think to myself, some of the ideas I found myself reevaluating, and I think something like that reflects the ultimate truth, in my opinion, is that you're really just responsible for yourself, and that's the ultimate thing that people can learn. And all that relates back into things like nihilism and whatnot. But that's how I would describe my current philosophical position. I'm sort of a quasi-traditionalist nihilist, if that makes any sense. And that leads me to a discussion of anus.com, this website that I mentioned in my at the very end of my history of Marxism video, where this website rather, which I'll leave a link to in the low bar, this website reviews black metal and death metal music, but it's also a site that has a whole bunch of articles on nihilism. There's a quasi-neo-fascist view, and you go on the website, it's nihilism, futurist traditionalism, and conservationism. And the guy who founded the website, I think, actually writes for a conservative, new right conservative, green conservative blog called America.org, if I'm not mistaken. But that's an interesting website, and I wanted to point out that I was reading that website the other day, and those don't really reflect my views because, like I said, it's a neo-fascist view, and and it is a neo-fascist view. There's no denying it, and like I said, you can go look around if you want. It doesn't take too long to get into that, and I don't buy into that stuff. I do in fact embrace the ego. I'm not a Randian believer in the virtue of selflessness, but a little bit of putting yourself first for a change is not a bad thing at all. They would probably like you to be slavishly devoted to your community or to your race or something. I don't believe in that crap at all. I believe there's a great deal of value for those sorts of things, but I still don't think they trump the individual completely, or that they should, because such a thing I think would be very, very tyrannical in all honesty. But anyway, those are some of the views that I've come to after thinking about it for a while, and it's getting a little bit. The video is getting a little bit long here, my audio rather. So I'm probably gonna cut off here. But anyway, that's that, and so those are my changing philosophical views, and this was an off-the-cuff video, so I don't know if this made a great deal of sense, but that's pretty much what I have to say, and and my computer has been acting up lately. I'll just end with this. My computer has been acting up lately, so I haven't really been able to answer any comments or anything. I don't like doing that. I usually like to try to answer as many comments as I can. And I've been meaning to do this, and I forgot to do this in one of my other videos, is that I wanted to thank people for listening or viewing the video I did about the feminist view on male castration. That video has gotten, I don't know, last time I checked it was like well over 1,000 views. I couldn't believe it when that video did as well as it did. I was just shocked, absolutely shocked at how well that video did. It was just amazing. And I hope I'm not doing the men's thing anymore. Really, I'll probably still discuss gender issues on this channel, but I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do MLM. I'm not gonna be like an MLM person. Not that I ever was anyway. But I'm not gonna. Yeah, like I said, I'm not gonna be doing that. But I'm glad that I was able to contribute to something against feminism, because I really have a distaste for feminism, and so if I could contribute to the fight against feminism, I think that was a good thing. And anyway, but I also wanted to point out that I wasn't surprised by anything that they said in that video. I got a little upset at my other video and kind of got a little, but I'm really not that surprised that they said all those disgusting things. But anyway, I'm going on too long, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.